Hi, everybody. This is Sheryl Cullom, and I am your host for our podcast today. What we're talking about is AI governance and ethics in healthcare analytics. And Tom, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am Tom Martin. I am Cheryl's co-host for AI governance and the AI Sentinel Institute, and very excited to talk about AI and the challenges that this is going to have in all of our organizations.
Yes. So we've got some really great topic points for you today. We're talking about first fundamental, what is AI? There's so many buzzwords with AI and but we want to try and get some clarity foundation of what is AI as it relates to healthcare analytics. And then we also want to talk about what do leaders need to think about as we start in this journey on this AI, artificial intelligence, as it progresses in our industry. It's really an industry disruptor. But as it progressed the journey, we want to start to think about how do you govern it? What kind of governance do you need to build within your organizations, and especially in healthcare analytics, where we've got some challenges with data, as everybody knows, and if you don't, then you will know.
Yeah,
um,
that's for sure.
but then when we start to create to introduce an artificial intelligent like technology that can reproduce errors or also there's also some benefits to it, right? So what is the right balance to create as we start to delve in this journey, especially in healthcare analytics? So, Tom, let's kind of get started with some
Sure.
foundational concepts here. What do you think? What is AI? Like what is AI as it relates to healthcare analytics?
For me, AI is a prediction engine, and I think that's where healthcare analytics, is really trying to predict. It's trying to solve, what's the next challenge that we have, what's going in our claims payments, for institutional or professional? What's our membership challenges? If we have a member that has very chronic case of diabetes or something, what is the success rate to care or managing their health care? What are the challenges inherent in that? And AI can help that. Again, it's taking all of this data, crunching through it, finding patterns that we as humans, number one, just couldn't see, or number two, don't have the time to go through, don't have the resources to be able to establish these various predictive models. So it artificial intelligence, as you know, just covers this broad spectrum of machine learning, deep learning, these artificial neural networks, and just everything in between, and chat GPT. What about that from a healthcare analytics perspective can we use to really predict and ultimately better patient outcomes? I mean, that's what I take it from. But what about you? Does that resonate? Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. The other thing I want to kind of ground ourselves with AI is it's not necessarily new. We've used it before, right?
Mm,
We've used machine
yeah,
learning
yeah,
before.
yeah.
I mean, Google search has been like been there a
Very
while
true.
when they actually try to predict what you're searching. It's been there. The only thing that,
Or Amazon, getting things in your cart.
oh
I
my
mean, it's
gosh,
yeah, it's
yes,
it's been there forever. Yeah.
right.
I
It's
mean,
been
so
there a
it's been
while.
there for the longest time. Yeah.
Yeah, but the only difference today is that now it talks back, right? It's actually generating new idea based off of how you trained the model, right? But what what gets trained? Like who trains it? People train it, right?
Yeah.
Data
Yeah.
trains it. And so it has the ability to ingest large amount of information, process it like how we process our brain thinking. But even in our brain thinking, we have our own personal filters based on our
Right.
experiences, right? So it's the same principle with AI to a point that we've just made it's smarter, but we as humans need to be smarter, right? We have to kind of train it
Yeah.
to a point that these training models, we don't introduce anything harmful.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, what's interesting with AI right now that I think everyone is kind of panicking about to some level, or they're skeptical, they're concerned about, is really these deep neural networks, this deep learning that you're seeing AI do, because it's taking us, to your point, it's taking us now further from what's your next search function going to be, or what's a product that you may like based on past products and similar products and things like that, which is all fine and well. But now we're seeing instances where the machine is actively learning. Yeah, we fed it some examples, we fed it some data, we fed it some historical information, but it's coming back with these neural networks and backward propagation and these neural nodes and neural networks, and it's producing outcomes that in some cases folks shrug their shoulders and go, I don't know how that was produced. And I
Hmm.
think that that's really what's becoming the main issue here, is that AI is no longer, it augments human decision making right
Right,
now, and as it should for the foreseeable future. But we're very close to AI being completely automated. I mean, we
right.
already have Teslas out there driving automated. What other automation can happen here? And I think that's where, when healthcare analytics comes into play, that can be very awesome, good and bad.
Right.
And I think that's where we really have to be concerned. I mean, look what happened with United Healthcare recently,
Yeah.
and the authorizations. Again, that wasn't an AI problem, that was an algorithm problem. We could
Right.
talk about that a little bit more, but again, cutting on the switch and just saying, well, AI, go forth and conquer, is really the wrong attitude. And I think AI is getting a little bit of a bad rap on that right now, but with a proper governance structure, those type of things you really can control for.
I agree. And that requires some level of monitoring, people being trained to understand what it does, right? And then the
Yeah.
other the other area of concern that we've seen is in AI is that black box kind of thing. Like how did it
We're going to
produce?
talk about that a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which we'll dig into later, but let's just kind of high level.
Yeah.
It produces like
Yeah.
auto decision making. How did it come up to that, right? So there's that algorithm
Yeah.
black box. But then the other part of that is the algorithm biases, right? There's biases that can get embedded.
Yeah.
So which we can dig deeper into later on. But I want to kind of transition that what you mentioned, what let's talk about, you know, AI governance. Like you mentioned AI
Sure.
governance.
Yep.
So let's talk about this. What is AI governance in in ethics in as it relates to healthcare analytics as far as the new emerging technology that we're facing today? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting that people are focusing on AI and saying the AI governance. It's not like healthcare plans shouldn't have had any type of data governance or any type of governance in general. We're not obviously saying that. AI just introduces such a momentous power in the hands of a healthcare company, that focusing and having AI governance specifically to ensure that the systems are maintained and controlled is of utmost importance. So really, at its core, it's just a framework. It's a process to manage and regulate any type of development, any type of software or system deployment, and really understanding AI's impact to whatever business problem that you have. If it's patient-centered care, fine. If it's a business-to-business transaction, fine. But how is AI really impacting you and your business for good or for worse, depending on the scenario? It takes into account ethical guidelines. It takes into account legal compliance. What type of regulatory controls do we have on all of this? What type of safety controls do we have? Look at what just happened with Change Healthcare. I'm just a massive data breach. AI is
Right.
not going
Oh
to
yeah.
necessarily solve that right now, but imagine if you had this massive AI data tool, all of your big data housed in this AI tool, patient data, everything you're trying to do to, again, improve patient outcomes. What if that was hacked and used incorrectly? That has society impacts on people. Their lives and their privacy really is at stake in a lot of these situations. So governance is there to say, are we creating AI systems that benefit our organization, benefit our members in this case, society at large? Are they safe? Are they ethical? And are they in accordance with any legal or regulatory compliance
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
requirements?
Yeah, and that should be part of the strategy, right? That should be part of their business
Yeah,
strategy. That needs to be
yeah,
embedded. And to me, what I've seen, and you and I have been in this for so long, uh,
yeah,
what we have seen is more reactive like
for
model,
sure,
right?
for
Versus
sure.
proactive model, meaning, hey, let's train your people. educate the people that are actually
uh,
in the room doing the stuff, making the
yeah,
decisions, or um, before we implement the tool, let's think about how we would monitor it and actually sustain the actual tool. Because I've seen horror like
yeah,
flashbacks
I know,
where we would
I know.
implement so many tools. That's fantastic and everything. I love that. And you're doing, people, they have good intentions of it, but what we fell short of is how do we start to sustain it and maintain it and monitor it continuously throughout the life cycle of that tool, right? Same
I
principle in
I heard
AI.
I heard an anecdote the other day I thought was amazing. 87% of machine learning projects fail. 87%.
Yeah, I've seen them.
So it's and it's probably not for lack of trying. It's probably not
Mhm.
for a lack of, we really want to do the right thing, I'm sure, but these things can backfire if you don't have the right framework and you don't have the right just controls
Governance.
in place. It
Yes.
really can erode what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we've seen a lot of that. So I think what we want to try and do with what we're with our mission really is to educate. Number one, educate
Yeah.
based on some of the experience and some of the things that we're learning. Second is to rally on, governance and ethics, right? Especially with
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, and how we can put certain, frameworks in place. It's just a start. Framework is just a start. It can evolve into
Yeah.
better ones. Um,
Yep.
Especially in healthcare analytics. Healthcare is something that it's a make or break. You can actually produce some harm in
You
real
can.
life harm, right? Um, and
Well,
there are
and to your point, I mean, when you think about the different industries, it's not to say that any industry is less challenged or more challenged. For example, AI in manufacturing has its own challenges. I mean, it
true.
has safety of workers
Yeah.
and OSHA requirements and things that can happen. Of course, there's inherent dangers there. Healthcare, though, again, a little biased, ironically, that it
Yeah.
it just has more of a intimate approach. You're really in someone's private life and
Yeah.
understanding their healthcare, which is such an intimate thing to know, that having something go wrong there is really going to be a huge problem. And when you think about, like for example, with United Healthcare with the authorization denials, again, that wasn't an AI problem, but still, if you're denying care and denying access, then you are potentially harming a patient from critical medical needs. You better have your framework established and the controls in place so those things don't go haywire. Otherwise, to your point, you're going to be on the front page and it's just going to be bad for everyone. So yeah,
Yeah. No, I agree. So on that note, thinking about like that, the incident, like it's a case study. That's what we're doing.
yeah,
It's a case study.
yeah,
Um, there's several things that would have had happened throughout, right? But let's go back to decision making, right?
sure.
As a leader, you're a leader in your space, payment integrity is your like your expertise. I consider you my guru, like the guru of PI, honestly.
That's kind of you. That's
And
kind of you.
my expertise is in chaos organizing. That's like a superpower, right?
This is true. This is true.
So like, but understanding, but and we've been in several different projects where we kind of need to implement certain things, but there are some decisions that need to happen beforehand, right? Before we can actually start
Yeah,
moving pieces together. But let's
yeah,
go back to the decision making part. Excuse me. Let's go back to the decision making. Decision makers, mostly leaders, like executive leaders, stakeholder leaders, whatever. They Some of that sets the stage and the precipice of how we move forward with all of our most of the projects, including some of the AI
sure.
projects potentially that could get implemented within organizations, right? It's the cultural
Right,
stuff. But
right.
let's think about what do you think as leaders, what should leaders start to think about, especially in the we call this the industrial age 4.0, right? We are in the industrial age 4.0 because of the emerging technology that we have been released in our industry. It's
Yep.
changing everything. It's kind of like the internet just got like reborn.
Oh man, for sure.
We're in
I
that
know.
stage. Just imagine what it was like when internet became
Yeah,
public, right? And people were
yeah.
afraid of it. Some people were adoptive of it, but it was like a wild west at the time. And we're
Could
kind of
this
in the
be?
same,
Could we have? Yeah, could we have an AI.com boom, maybe, and
right?
an AI.com
We don't
bust,
know, right?
possibly,
And so
possibly, sure.
we're in that kind of journey, and we're starting to kind of walk into this journey and see what that might look like. But as a
Yeah,
leader in an organization who has to make decisions, especially what is best for your organization, and kind of to sustain the market positioning your organization, or to even to sustain the mission that your organization has created so that you can serve whoever it is that you're serving. What do leaders need to start to think about in as I call it more like a proactive approach to as
yeah.
we start to move towards the progression of this AI journey.
Yeah, the first thing I would start with, that it's a tough question because I mean, you think from the CEO seat or any leader's seat, of things that they have to go forth and really think through and forecast. It's always going to be difficult. But I think the first thing before you run to an AI solution is really step back for a second and say, is my organization as a whole, is my department, is it ready for AI? You have to look at your mission statement and ultimately your business objectives to say, does AI have a place here? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. AI is not always going to be the solution. It could be a simple spreadsheet that's the solution. I mean, I don't know. You really have to
Right,
sit down and what's my business problem? So I think first off, is your organization even primed for this level of software, this level of data, this level of computing power? Is it ready? If your mission statement is flawed, or your mission statement has to be tweaked or adjusted for AI, you need to bring your stakeholders together. And I said stakeholders, not shareholders. You need to bring your stakeholders together to sit down and really think through, if we're going to introduce AI, how do we want to ensure that our foundational organizational just mission statement aligns to that? And that leads ultimately into, what is your ethical framework as an organization? And I'm not saying you have to have statues of Socrates all over the office, or Immanuel Kant on the
yeah,
background of your computer. I'm not saying that, but at the end of the day, if you as a leader don't really understand what drives your ethical framework, what you're in the business to do in the right way, you're going to have a real big problem with AI, because it will very quickly bite you, because it can do things that we even haven't even projected yet, that from an organization's perspective, if they're not ready and primed from a discipline perspective, they're really going to hurt themselves in the end, because AI is going to bring no benefit. That would be for me at the first place to start. What do you think about that?
no, that's a good place to start because strategy always is from the top, right? It needs to come from the
Yeah,
top. But
yeah,
as part of your edit, to me, as a decision, as a leader making decisions, obviously, yes, let's think about where we are now, current state.
mhm,
But then also, let's think about where our people are at today, right?
yeah,
Because your
yeah.
people, organizations are ran by people.
Oh yeah,
Every
core.
organizations are ran by people.
Most
Is
important thing you've
eh,
got. Yep.
yes, and you mentioned, is your organization ready for it? Well, then let me ask, are your people ready for it? Did you train them
Good
enough? Did
question.
you
Yeah,
build enough culture? Did you build enough culture of um, corporate social responsibility to be
yeah,
able to implement ethical, like ethics at scale, right? Governance and
yeah,
ethics at scale. Secondly, are
yeah.
your people educated enough of what does AI do? How can they collaborate with AI? How can they think about biases and not transfer those biases into AI? But really just it's knowledge, something about like understanding knowledge, right? But then also being having wisdom to apply it. That's the key.
That's true, and I think, like you said, having an appetite for it, because to your
Hmm.
point, as a leader, it's a top-down approach.
Right.
If you are wanting to introduce AI, like let's say the stakeholders come together, and stakeholders should be your employees as well, but we know how organizations work. Let's say the
Hmm.
CEO and the board and a couple other high ups are like, oh, we're going to do this AI solution. This is great. To your point, if your employees or members of your organization are skeptical or could be Luddites to a degree, or just
Right.
outright, antagonistic to
Yeah.
AI, to your point, it's going to fail. So
Yeah.
what, not only from a mission perspective, it's saying, are we as an organization ready, but do we have our employees primed? One of the things I keep telling folks is educate yourself. And I hate to say that, that sounds so arrogant, but
I know.
there's so much free material right now for AI. IBM has a 10-hour
I
course.
know.
Yeah, it's a 10-hour course. You know what? Suck it up. You have to learn this stuff. And that's what I tell people. You have to learn this stuff. If you have someone coming at you talking about reinforcement learning and k-means clustering, and well, what kind of reinforcement learning should I, if you're like, well, I don't know, well, there's plenty of resources out there,
Yes.
free and paid for, if you want the certificate. Go out there and get educated. But to your point, if leaders want to instill AI in their organizations, they want to do it right, guess what? Invest in education to
Yes.
ensure your employees understand what's happening,
Mhm.
why it's happening, and why it's important. That will help alleviate some of the skepticism, you hope, but we'll do a much better job.
Yeah, and the other point was because there's so much fear in this, right? There's
Oh, yeah.
positive and negative, right? Like there's so many. I think, I use AI. Like I study AI, I test it, I do everything I can, and I've seen all the tools. But because I want to learn it, I need to understand
Yeah.
it. This is something that
Yeah.
we're going to be using later on, but I'm on a mission to understand it and learn it and see how can we collaborate better so that we don't introduce harm. That's really the point of it. But there's so many
Exactly.
people in fear of it, meaning like they're just they're afraid AI is going to take our job. I heard from one like a meeting we had with a leader that's something about he said AI is not going to take jobs from people who understands it.
It's fair.
It's going to elevate people who understands it because that's where the need's going to be. But
Yeah.
it's just the same principle as when to me it's the same thing as when the first personal computer came out. Right?
Right. Right.
The automation in manufacturing, for example, especially yes, it took some people's jobs, but then it created new
Right.
areas of positions that is a need. So really, in my perspective, the way I view it, as an individual contributor, I want to be continuously learning and understanding what are the emerging technology and how it's going to
Yeah.
apply in my
Yeah.
role, and how can I help my organization, especially, if you're working in an organization, how can I educate myself, train myself, continuously learn so
Mhm.
that I can continuously like bring value to my organization in the role and the position that I'm fulfilling at the time, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's kind of
That's the only
one,
way you're gonna be able to do it. Yeah.
right? And that's actually one of the things that I think we get so hyped up about the fear that we start to deviate of what's the possibility, right?
Right. It's right now, it's noise. I think
Hmm.
it's just people are, rather than, and again, it's AI augmentation. Right now, yes, Tesla, has it, and it can automate a drive around, but there still needs to be a driver in the driver's seat. It still can
Yeah,
make mistakes, not 100%. Well,
right.
the same thing here. It's augmentation. It's just going to help you be better at your job, remove some of the mundane tasks, put you in avenues and directions that you never thought about going before. And if you embrace AI as a co-pilot and as an assistant, then you're going to be much more successful than someone who completely throws their hands up and says, I don't want anything to do this. But unfortunately, you see this. You see this in a lot of LinkedIn posts. You see this in a lot
I
of
know.
online forums that people are just completely adamant about embracing any of it. And again, I as we'll talk about here, that there's certain guidelines you need to go through and certain governance frameworks in place to make sure that AI is truly a co-pilot and is not running amok. I mean, everyone always brings up the paperclip problem. There's actually two paperclip problems that people talk about, but the one paperclip problem I always think is kind of interesting is that if you if you took AI and said, listen, I want you to make paperclips the most efficient way possible. Just I want to the ROI on paperclips, I want to be just as nil. I want to make a lot of money on paperclips. And if you pushed AI out to run amok, then AI is like, okay, well, then I'm going to have stoplights change so I can increase car accidents. I'm going to divert from critical industries to put into more metal for paper clips, and ultimately kind of collapse society so that I have the best paperclip efficiency ever. Yeah, oh, okay, that's certainly a good science fiction novel and a good and a good a good kind of fear mongering that you can go about. But again, if that's it's being really really hyperbole, but still you get the point that there has to be controls in place, and that
Yeah.
yes, AI can make the algorithms can make mistakes. Ultimately, AI is there. It's just a tool. It's just a
Yeah.
software tool and a
Yep.
predictive model. It's as
Hmm.
good as what you feed it, and it's as good as what you regulate it.